Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second of Bright Green's interviews with the leadership candidates in this year's election for the leadership of the Green Party of England and Wales. Before I get going and introduce our candidates for today, I just have one request for you, which is to scroll down right now and hit that subscribe button. It should be just there. It doesn't cost you a single penny. What it does do is it means that you will never miss any of the videos that we put out. You won't miss the videos that are going out with interviews with the rest of the candidates. It helps Bright Green a massive deal, and it does not cost you anything. So hit that subscribe button right now. Without further ado, I'm going to pass over to our candidates who I've got with us today. So I'm delighted to be joined by Emilia Womack. Emilia, how are you doing?
I'm good, thank you, Chris. Been busy in the campaign, but really excited about what we're achieving.
Brilliant, thank you, Emilia. And of course, Emilia is not standing on her own in this election, standing as part of a job share co-leadership ticket with Tamsin Omond, who is also with me today. Tamsin, how are you doing?
Hello, Chris, and hello, Bright Green followers. Do subscribe by clicking the link below. Yeah, I'm really well, actually. It feels quite strange to not be sat next to Amelia. I know we're in our digital spaces right now, but we've spent kind of so much time alongside each other doing these interviews that it feels a little bit like I'm missing a body part. But yeah, feeling energized, feeling very happy to be here, feeling part of something, you know, very beautiful with the campaign running as it is, and yeah, just happy to have been invited here to talk to you all.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you both. So I'm going to go straight into it and ask you a question which hopefully will be the most straightforward of the ones you're given, which is, why do you think you are the best placed people to be leading the Green Party at this time?
And it's a really exciting time to be leading the Green Party. Having been deputy leader for 7 years, I've got the knowledge and experience to be delivering on the increases that we've seen of our councillors, the surges we've seen in members and votes. And on top of that, we've seen with the IPCC and the fact that COP's just around the corner, that this is an important and vital time. In fact, a window of opportunity, really, to be getting our green policies in place and holding the government to account for inaction. So with all of that experience and all of that work that I've done with local parties and in communities, I am determined that we are going to do something incredible, something special. And I think this is really where Tamsin comes in, because together we've got all of this very clear vision, the same vision, but different skills and experiences to deliver that. And that's what's really exciting about our campaign and why we're able to achieve so much. Tamsin, I'll hand over to you.
Yeah, I mean, it has been an extraordinary journey just these past 3 weeks with Amelia. And in some ways, I think we're already delivering on the promises that we're making within our kind of broader pitch for leadership. Our campaign is already delivering on those promises. And I guess the campaign is often the foundation of the leadership that's going to come. So if you like what you're seeing with our campaign, then just know that so much more of this will be delivered if you choose to vote for us. But I suppose what I uniquely bring, you know, like everything that Amelia has said about the kind of the consistency that she brings, the institutional knowledge of the Green Party, the 7 years experience of being alongside you, pounding on doors, walking the streets, and really understanding, you know, how to embed the practices that are going to get more Greens elected, like Target to Win, into our local Green parties. She's got that covered, and she by herself is a winning ticket. I guess where I come in is with the kind of broader movement strategy. So I've been part of the environmental movement for well over a decade, always at the forefront of the most important conversations within the kind of mainstream around the environment. So whether that's Heathrow expansion and the opposition to that, or more recently Extinction Rebellion. And this move, like being a movement strategist or being a community organizer, like it's a unique set of skills that I want to bring into the Green Party and give to, you know, as many people as are interested in learning about these skills. And these are the skills by which we build a movement from, you know, with Extinction Rebellion, from the kind of 30 people who were, you know, founding members and who were doing the work before that first Extinction Rebellion, to the hundreds of thousands of people who now consider themselves part of that movement. And so I guess like with that, it's about people. How do we value our members? How do we make sure that anyone who turns up to a local Green Party meeting morning, goes away excited and inspired and telling all their friends and family to join the Green Party too. So that's the movement organizer piece. The second piece is that I am a media specialist. That's what I do for work. I've advised, from government to NGOs to grassroots organizations to individual influencers on their media strategy, especially to do with the climate and ecological emergency. I'm also a really strong media performer. I've had, I've been on all of the big shows from Newsnight to BBC to Sky News, covered in every single newspaper, all of the magazines that kind of define culture. And I think it's really important right now that this message of us, the Green Party, as the only national organization that can do something, that can create the transformative political answer to this moment of climate and ecological emergency, is something that we're communicating strongly from our media platforms. And there's been such a lot of media interest around our campaign because journalists know Amelia and I, the editors know Amelia and I, they know we are strong media performers. They know that when they get us on, we say interesting things in interesting ways. And so of course they're following what we're doing. And of course they're excited by what we're doing, not to mention the excitement of the pitch, which is this broad, visionary, bold leadership that we're offering to represent people who haven't been represented, from marginalized and oppressed communities to the stranded Labour Party, ex-members of the Labour Party, to the youth movement that is getting behind our campaign, with people like Jack Harries sharing to his 1.4 million Instagram followers. So there's the movement strategy bit, the media specialist bit, and then finally, as a founder of many grassroots organizations, I've been intimately involved in fundraising. It's just a pain in the butt, but as a founder, you have to do it because those are the people that funders want to talk to. They want to talk to the founders and they want to talk to the leaders. So as a co-leader, that's something that uniquely I could bring, is this experience of working both as a fundraising strategist, advising funding panels, but also as a founder asking for money. I just can't wait to sit down with the fundraising team at the Green Party and to work out how we can best develop those relationships.
And this is why I feel like we are the perfect co-leadership team. We do bring unique skills, and we know that what we need to get more Greens elected, whether that's councillors or MPs, making sure that we're building towards the next London Assemblies and Welsh Parliament elections, is about resource. It's about people, it's about knocking on doors, it's about inspiring people to do that work to ensure that we're able to get more Greens elected. And I think it's really powerful that we've got all of these strategies to ensure that we are looking to big ambitious targets about what we can achieve, taking advantage of these moments that are about outside of the party, these moments with COP, these moments when it comes to making sure that we're tackling injustice, making sure that we're addressing inequality while staying below 1.5 degrees of warming and tackling the ecological emergency. I think we've got the perfect combination of skills and experiences to do something truly special.
So you talked about a lot of different pieces there, and what I wanted to get you to do was imagine yourself, imagine you've been elected, and imagine yourself at the end of your term, your first term as co-leaders. And looking back on your term, what one thing would you want to be in a position where you could say, that is the thing that I'm most proud of having achieved as co-leader?
Normally we'd alternate, but I'd love to dive in at this point because if I, obviously I'd been considering running for leader, and I will admit that I considered running on my own. I've done all of this work. I've done a leaders debate. I've done all of the work really to feel that I was best placed to be running for leader. But the reason that I was running for co-leadership and working with Tamsin was because the only thing that a leader of the Green Party right now should be thinking about is getting the next MP. And the best way for us to do that was for me to be working with Tamsin. So for me, it would be that we got more MPs elected, and really that was it wasn't even needing to look back, be at the end looking back. For me, right at the beginning, how we built this relationship was on that basis.
Yes. Yeah, it's tricky, isn't it? Because this particular context of this co-leadership contest or leadership contest is like such a challenging one for the Green Party. And I think we are right to feel really challenged by like the ways that different people have felt excluded from being part of the Green Party. So in some ways, like, you know, my number one thing, and these things go completely in line, and I have to say, Chris, that I don't really, I mean, I know that they're really good journalistic questions of like, what's the one thing? But it's like, it's never as simple as that for me. And often the one thing is the thing that feeds into the other thing. And, you know, like there are woven threads in achievement. And what I would say is that the Green Party is like a rich, inclusive place that represents and has representatives from the society that we're seeking to represent. And because of that, we'll have more people out on the streets, banging on doors, talking to people, being able to relate to those people that we find on the doorstep, because our lived experience for members in the Green Party is richer than it currently is. And that will lead to our second MP and then our third MP. Very, you know, I think we're quite ambitious about this. We look for non-linear moments of change. We don't just want the incremental change of one MP, hopefully. Like we're really thinking that once we get those next two MPs, how do we leverage that moment to tell a story about an emerging movement that is government material? And, you know, that's the sort of vision that we want to be thinking around. So for sure, we're going to see the next MP get elected under our leadership. That's just a dead cert. And how we're going to do that is we're going to have a party that is more inclusive and is better representing the society that we seek to represent.
I've got a few questions to follow up on that. The first one is that last claim that you made, which is that it is a dead cert that we'll get a second MP under your leadership. How can you make that claim and be sure that you're going to follow through, that you're definitely going to get a second MP elected, when politics as a whole is in massive flux? Things are changing all the time. And you know, we've had the 2015 general election, the 2017 general election, the 2019 general election, where the party has put resource into winning that second MP, and it hasn't come off. So what's different about your leadership that you think you can deliver what Natalie Bennett failed to do, what Jonathan and Caroline failed to do, and then what Jonathan and Sian failed to do as well?
So it's not about what's different about our leadership, although this whole interview can talk about that, and also we'll be demonstrating it through our interview in terms of what your audience is seeing that's different about us and what we're promising. It's really what is different about the context. And the context right now is that the climate and ecological emergency has never been higher in the public, in the mainstream consciousness. And that's for all sorts of reasons. People are worried, people are concerned to a level that they have never been before, because the emergency, it's here now. It's you know, just in London, I live in Stratford. Stratford Station was closed because of the flooding that happened earlier this month. So the climate and ecological emergency as a reality, the IPCC report and the fact of them saying that this is code red for humanity, the COP that's happening, which should be an opportunity for the Green Party to break through on the national stage as the voice on the climate and ecological emergency. If we have media performers who can deliver that, then we will break through as that voice. And there will be such a higher recognition and such a higher appetite for the sorts of policies that we are suggesting and delivering where we have power to deal with the climate and ecological emergency. So I think the context is really like, that's why it's so important that we make a bold decision as the Green Party right now, because this context is not one to be missed. You know, my whole career has been based on having a kind of very clear-sighted focus on moments that might deliver non-linear change. And for the Green Party, this is one such of those moments. There is, like within funding circles right now, there's a lot of research going into what the different demographics are of people who might be activated towards more active citizenship regarding the climate and ecological emergency. And there's a group of people called the civic pragmatists. We need to be putting a lot of focus onto the civic pragmatists. At the moment, the Green Party membership is broadly a group called progressive activists, that's about 9% of the population. Civic pragmatists are 13% of the population, and they are stranded, they are worried, they are curious, but they're very cautious. They're not the kinds of people who will go out on protests. They believe in civic institutions to deliver change. They are looking for something to belong to. They are desperate to do more than recycle or change their own transport. They know that these individual personal choices aren't enough to deliver the level of change that we need if we're going to meet the climate and ecological emergency, and they are uniquely attuned to how important it is that we do meet this moment. As the Green Party, if we are going energetically to those people, presenting a bold vision, offering them a place to belong, letting them know that when they go to their local Green Party meeting, they're going to be welcomed because of the movement work that we've done with local Green parties, that they're going to be given things that they can do to make a real difference, then they're going to start seeing more Greens in power. And from there, we get this picture of non-linear change. So I think like this is a very exciting moment. It's also an awful moment. You know, it's had to get to this point. That's because of the failure of successive governments. Again, with a strong Green Party voice in the media, we can be pointing to that failure. COP is you know, it from the contacts that I have in the COP process, it's looking 50-50 chance that the government's going to cancel COP. If they cancel COP, it's terrible. We need a media strategy around that. What happens if they cancel COP? That sort of insight comes from the unique networks that I have from working on the international processes as a delegate for the Marshall Islands over my career. So I think, you know, yes, we have unique skills. Yes, Amelia and I have a bold vision. Yes, our leadership can achieve many things, but also I think it is the leadership that is recognizing that everything is to play for right now and is inspiring people to get behind that. So yes, have I missed something, Amelia?
So when we look at those strategies as well that we've already been embedding in the party, Target to Win has had a huge impact on what we've been able to do and achieve. Having worked on the last 3 general elections, obviously I understand the successes of each of those campaigns and often where we could have improved the work that we were doing. Now, 2015 was one of the most interesting elections. It wasn't a snap election. So yeah, we had more of a build up and more time to really work on the ground and deliver our national message as well. That time was at a point of a weaker Labour leadership. I wouldn't say it was as weak as the Labour leadership that we see now, in fact. It was under the point of talking about austerity. And at the moment, when it's inevitable that we're going to see an austerity budget come from this government, this is when we can take the points of and learnings of the 2015 election, where we were at the closest of winning Bristol West with Darren Hall as the candidate, by taking this moment, talking to those groups, as Tamsin has discussed, of really kind of embedding that in the strategy and ensuring that we are working on all of those experiences to make sure that we have those vital green wins. And it's really been the work of the members and people on doorsteps that have brought us to this point. We came second in the Bristol Mayor elections this year. We know that if everybody who voted in the council elections in certain constituencies vote the same way in a general election, that we can win those parliamentary seats. We're proving that we can beat first past the post, but what we need is more people to be able to deliver and change that. And I think that that's where the work and strategy that we're looking at comes into it.
And I suppose just to add very briefly, you know, we will be a leadership with time to deliver this bold vision to the party, and then to make sure that we're using our platform and using all of these new resources that we expect to come flooding into the party to uplift and bolster our extraordinary candidate in Bristol West.
So my follow-up to that is really kind of relates to something that you've said elsewhere in the campaign. I think it was in an interview with the Eye, where you said that you envisaged the party winning between 8 and 10 MPs by 2030. Now, there will be people who will be watching this who will remember the 2015 general election, which we've talked about, where there were claims that we were going to win 6 MPs or 12 MPs, and that didn't come to fruition. And there'll be people watching this that will be responding to this and think, frankly, that's not realistic. What would you say to them?
So firstly, we need to have big ambitions to make big achievements and to make what feels impossible happen. At the moment, with the political strategy that we have, it's about how we have target and development areas that will, I think we really do need to be quite nimble in how that changes. Let's not forget that actually one of the failures of 2015 was to not adapt to what was happening on the Isle of Wight quick enough to ensure that the Isle of Wight had the resources to potentially win that seat. And it was a very unique time with the role of UKIP playing in to that election there. And so I think with the targets and developments we have at the moment, it's about the ambitions for them for the next 10 years. And so we're not talking above and beyond we're talking about above and beyond our political strategy in terms of what we can do and achieve, but we're not talking above and beyond the ambitions of that political strategy for it to be unrealistic as well. That's political strategies about bringing in the knowledge and resources of local areas and communities and constituencies, the knowledge of our strategists that we have that are working on these campaigns at the moment as well. And I think that's we're just adding our ambition about what we can do to resource that as well.
Yeah, I just say, like, imagine 2 years ago where we were, not as a Green Party, but as, just as a normal person living in society. There are so many things that were different about who we were and how we imagined ourselves to relate with the world. We hadn't lived through a pandemic. We hadn't lived through the extraordinary uprising around Black Lives Matter. There are so many things that are creating new realities right now. And these global forces are only going to get busier. We've had a fairly stable, in some ways, or for some people, and by that I mean white Western people, it's been pretty stable for the past, almost for the past 400 years since the beginning of colonialism and capitalism, and this kind of extractive, exploitative system that has allowed us to have such privilege. These systems are coming to an end. The systems that fueled the climate and ecological emergency are coming to an end because all of the costs of that system, which we have been delaying and delaying and delaying, we're now coming to feel the full force of those costs. And that's, that's going to be the reality that defines all of our future. We're living in a time of extreme insecurity, uncertainty, precarity. We have no idea in some ways what the future is going to bring. And I think, to imagine that we can continue with the same kind of incremental processes or incremental assumptions about what the world is going to give us, what the context is within which we're going to be trying to define our political voice is frankly quite unsophisticated. I think I look to Adrienne Marie Brown, who is an amazing Black movement organizer, and her ideas around emergent strategy. She's written a great book called Emergent Strategy. I encourage everyone to read it. So I think we need to be emergent, and we need to be flexible, and we need to build into the roots of our party the sort of resilience that means that whatever storms come, we're able to adapt and emerge strongly to meet those storms, and then to pivot from them into an even stronger position, making even stronger arguments why the Green Party is the place for young people to come to, for oppressed and marginalized people to come to, and for civic pragmatists, who I spoke about earlier, who we can broadly call stranded Labour voters, to come to as well. And at that point, it's impossible to tell what the future is going to bring. But if we don't have an ambitious vision for what we're going to achieve, then sure, we might get the next MP at the next election, and we'll all have to wonder whether that was enough in terms of our personal efforts to be part of a solution, or to be part of an emerging movement that can cope with the climate and ecological emergency.
So you touched on it a little bit there. So one of the questions that kind of emerges from some of this conversation, I think, is if the Green Party is going to get to a position where it is, winning 8 to 10 MPs or more in the future, then a key component of getting there is building an electoral coalition of different groups of voters, whether that be demographics, whether that be people, a coalition built around values, whether it's an economic coalition. All political parties have an electoral coalition, which makes up their voter base, and often what you see is changes in those coalitions is what leads to changes in election results. And the 2019 election is a classic example of that, where the Labour coalition collapsed and the Tories built a new coalition. What do you see as the electoral coalition that would underpin the Greens' success in the future?
I think that I've said this a lot because I've got quite a clear sense of this. So I'll repeat it briefly and then just allow Amelia to come in. So again, the youth movements, and not just the youth movements, but also all young people, like these people are emerging into a reality that is frankly terrifying. And we know from the levels of anxiety in our young people, like how they're experiencing this what they're inheriting, and we need to be the answer for their despair. We need to be the hopeful institution that they can belong to, where they can feel that actually they don't need to feel despair because they're taking action, because they're part of something that is winning and that is moving forward and that's progressive. And we have had amazing, just our campaign. If you could be on our morning calls or on our Monday evening call, and you're all very welcome to our Monday evening call, then you'd see like, there's so many young people from both within and also new members to the party who are just wanting to get organised and wanting to organise with us. And I think we'll see much more of that if you elect us. So youth broadly, again, oppressed and marginalised people who have been excluded both from the Green Party, but also from basically from the political establishment as is, and we are, we've launched a Liberation Manifesto, and I think it's clear to see that we're very serious, and we've got some very credible proposals about how we are going to make the Green Party a space where they are welcome and where they are centred, where they're central to the kinds of solutions and the kinds of politics that we are putting forward. And then the third group is this kind of this 13 to 14% of society, these civic pragmatists, and I can send you the links on those from the research that's been done. But essentially, it's a kind of stranded Labour vote. It's majority women. It's mums who having had children are now really worried about the future that those children will inherit. So I think like that, for me, is our coalition, but Amelia will be able to speak, because of this breadth of our experience, much better about who already is voting for us and how we can reach beyond those networks.
Because what we've seen in the last council elections is Greens winning off every political party, and that we're seeing a real step change in people who believe in our policies. And I think as the Greens, we are quite radical, but at this point in time, our policies are quite simply rational. And what we see is hardworking people in our communities making change happen. Elected Greens across the board are the hardest working people that I know, who are delivering change and representing their communities in such a strong and powerful way. So I think that there's a lot of work that is being done about how we attract from all political parties, because this moment in time demands nothing less. And I think when we look at what's happened with COVID, people have thought quite differently about the challenges that we have as a country. Things like a universal basic income. I was talking to people from across the kind of political spectrum about the benefits of a universal basic income, which, it does kind of work across the political spectrum in some camps anyway, but people were thinking about these bigger ideas and appreciate that the systems that got us to this position where people could not make ends meet during the lockdown, and people were losing work and struggling compared to the billionaires who were making such extreme profits that they were able to go to space. we know that those systems aren't going to solve the problems that we have right now. And people are thinking in an incredibly different way as a result of our collective experience of lockdown and COVID, and seeing the crumbling structures of a broken political system.
There's a few things I wanted to maybe tease out a little bit there, because I think there's some interesting stuff in terms of that electoral coalition question that you posed there. The first one is on what you were saying, Tamsin, about young people. Now, the thing that there'll be lots of people who will be agreeing and saying, yes, we have a politicized generation of young people coming through the youth strikes, through a range of political activity, as well as people, a generation that has been woefully underserved by the status quo. The flip side, of course, though, is that young people are statistically far less likely to vote, and building a coalition off the back of people who are unlikely to vote is very challenging. Now, the other thing I wanted to ask is in relation to what you said, Emilia, which is you talked about the last local elections where the Greens won seats in, rural Suffolk to, trendy Bristol. Can't believe I just used the word trendy. I feel like I'm about 90. To everything in between. Now, the question I put to you on that is, of course, in local elections, the reality is that people are voting on a different set of things than they are in national elections. In local elections, and we've all campaigned in local elections. We all know what the issues are. People want a candidate that's local, that they feel represents them, that does the work, and they vote on local public services like potholes, bins, etc., which are important. But in a national election, people are voting much more clearly out of around interests. And when you look at it in terms of interests, we have a society where people have fundamentally different interests. So the rural Suffolk voters that we may have peeled off in a local election, I think there would be a question around whether those who are homeowners, are landlords, are wealthy, are going to be voting for the same political project as, renters, council tenants, the precariously employed that we've talked about elsewhere. So there's two strands of that. There's the young people question, and there's the square in the circle of the wider electorate question that I wanted to put to you.
And I think it's probably best if I go for the first bit and you go for the second bit. What do you think of that, Amelia? I know that it's...
I was going to touch on both, but would it be okay if I
both? Yeah, it's definitely your turn to start.
So let's look at those last few general elections, because I do completely agree with that people do vote differently. But what people have been looking for is a vision, and a vision that works for everybody, really. When we're talking about a Green New Deal, I think it really captures the imagination of people across the board, because we're talking about proven economics, about how we invest rather than cut from communities, as we saw with the New Deal in America, about how you ensure that you are creating something out of a crumbling system. And that Green New Deal, that vision is so vital, because we know that whether you own a business or whether you are in precarious work, that we are winning the arguments when it comes to the climate and ecological emergencies, and people are concerned about what their futures hold, because climate change just isn't at the door anymore. It isn't something in the future. It is now flooding in people's lounges, in their transport networks, into their communities, and causing vast damage. We know that we're seeing these hotter summers, and that with the reality of what climate change will bring is right here in this moment in time. These big visions are visions that I think that everybody can get behind, because it is about taking every part of politics and ensuring that we're delivering change. Now, if you look at those who simply look at the economics of policy, then we're creating a broken system if we look at economics alone, because really our economy is built on so many things. I kind of see it as like an upside down triangle. You've got the environment at the top. We need the environment for our food and water and shelter and the basic things that we need for life. It is people that turn that environment into the goods and resources that create business or cooperatives, or the very kind of structures that then go forward to create the economy. And you need to be taking all of those aspects into account. The Green Party's policies of putting forward a Green New Deal, of putting forward what it looks like when we actually have a sustainable transport network, that means that using sustainable transport is simply the cheapest and easiest option, about ensuring that we have renewables, that we're creating green jobs, green business and a green economy. I think this is a clear vision that we can get behind regardless of the historic political context, because I talked about 2015, but actually politics has changed. Politics has changed a lot in terms of people's priorities and people's fears as well. And actually around the world, we're seeing it's something incredibly different coming forward. I mean, typically we're seeing typically younger women coming forward and leading in politics, about a politics of compassion and a politics of change, whether that's AOC in America, Jacinda, or even the young women who are part of the government in Finland. We are seeing a real step change in our understanding and how we deliver change. And I think that the big visions are what people can get behind, because here in the UK, we've been lacking big vision for such a long time, and are certainly lacking big visions that bring everybody with us. And I think in terms of young people, so we have seen small rises in why young people coming out to vote. Different elections have been different, but what political engagement looks like is also about representation, and it's about youth engagement in politics that actually initially attracted me to run as deputy leader 7 years ago, because I was being invited to so many events to support young people to be running as candidates, because the more young people you have in politics, the more it relates to a generation. And I really do feel that as a generation, Tamsin and I represent something different. We represent a generation that had tuition fees, admittedly lower tuition fees than the current generation, but we were the first generation to be paying those. We are a generation that I've worked 0-hour contracts and struggled to make rent as a result of rising rent prices, while at the same time there were cuts to housing allowances for certain age groups. We also see vast wage inequality for young people as well. And there are big issues that we have lived through and experienced that simply other politicians haven't, that I hope that we're able to really raise the conversation on and show that something better was possible for us and is possible for the generations to come.
Honestly, at this point, all I can do is stand up and give Amelia a standing ovation. And I think that's something that we really need to be aware of, is Emilia is extraordinary. She is a brilliant representative of the Green Party. And when she talks just then about the Green New Deal as an economic reform that could transform reality for so many people, and is also just an eminently practical thing for us to do, this rational, not radical piece of the argument. What we see there is a voice and a person who, with the boldness of their ideas and vision, can speak to a demographic of people who haven't seen anything to identify with at the heart of our national politics. They haven't seen anyone trying to talk to them. They haven't seen anyone reaching out to them. And that's why all of these young people are taking to the streets, because they don't see any way into electoral politics that's actually going to represent them. You know, those young people who are organizing the school strikes, like, obviously with my role in movement organizing, I know them. And they are some of the most brilliant organizers who belong in a political party. They have all of the skills that we need for we're going to build this movement to the next scale, to the next step, so that we can strongly take that next step. So I think with the sorts of vision that we're presenting, like, we're going to attract people to our party. We're going to attract those movement organizers to our party. And they have been woefully underserved, but they are extraordinarily politicized. You know, I'm always in awe of the sophistication of political analysis that is happening from the generations below me. You know, I've only just got here in terms of my own understanding of anti-racism, of all of the different different intersecting things, patriarchy, colonialism, capitalism, these intersecting power structures that define our reality. For them, it's just what they talk about on a Sunday morning. And I think that sophistication of political ideology, like how exciting that that's our young people, and how devastating that so far there hasn't been a political home for them, a traditional political home for them. And you know, we really are that for them. So yes, I think it's hugely exciting. Just from the coverage that we're already receiving, we're seeing young people coming into the party. We're seeing young people coming into our campaign. There have been more than 3,000 people who have joined since the last month. You know, I'm really excited when this is over to find out the demographics of who those people are. But I feel like with the media attention that we've had, with the, you know, posting on social media for, you know, young influencers like Corentin Levine and Jack Harries, you know, in some ways, like many of those people are likely to be pretty young. And I think, you know, what we do with them to make them feel part of this movement, to empower them, to give them responsibility so that they're alongside us, organizing their communities, getting more young people into the Green Party, then we'll have something that will truly be like a crashing wave and a really exciting story. And not just like, oh, a new story. No, it's a story that's being told around the world, as Amelia said, with AOC in New York, with Jacinda in New Zealand, with the government of Finland. Like, this is what politics is going to look like. So right now would be a really brilliant moment for the Green Party to stick its flag in and say, yes, we want this. We want to belong. We want to be part of this new wave of intersectional, feminist, young leadership.
Let's talk about Wales. So at the moment, the Green Party doesn't have a single member of the Senedd. And I believe there is currently only one Green councillor in Wales. Now, we have local elections coming up very, very soon in Wales, and we will have another Senedd election soon as well. Why hasn't the Green Party broken through in Wales, and how are you going to fix that?
I'll go. So there are many reasons. To begin with, we only have our council elections once every 5 years. And for those local parties that have elections every single year and are, you know, feel like they're quite exhausted by it because it's a constant kind of, you know, being on doors, next year, next election, it's a constant cycle. There is a real benefit to that as well, because there's a chance to build and have those stepping stones every single year to ensure that you are winning seats. And I've seen so many local parties beat first past the post in one seat and be able to then take the whole ward year upon year. And yeah, there are advantages to that. I appreciate there are disadvantages, but in terms of electoral success, I see that there's a real advantage there. Because what I feel in Wales is we have only just been, we delivered Target to Win campaigns in 2016, but before Campaign School was set up, before we had the machinery in place that has made these huge wins across England. And we are benefiting from a strategy and structure that has created an expertise of how we deliver elections across the country. This will be the first election where Wales really has had that advantage of the infrastructure in place to be taking advantage of, or even ensuring that we've had field officers working on a more permanent basis. We also need to be, for those Senedd elections, in South Wales East, we increased our vote by 100%. Again, these elections happen every 5 years, and with that foundation that we've built, it is really clear that we can make a breakthrough next time by doing more of what we have been doing. But what Wales really needs is more resource. I think that for the Welsh Parliament elections, had we had a field officer in, campaign managers in place just 6 months earlier, so few people will know that our campaign managers started in January. Our election was in May. It was a very quick kind of election where we had that infrastructure. kind of interesting actually, because the problem in Wales quite often as in Wales in general is about infrastructure, and it's interesting that internally actually I would say that the issue here is infrastructure. So I will actually make a plea at this point to everybody who wants to see success in Wales. We are winning target elections. In fact, our Welsh Parliament strategy was about how we build and target in specific wards to build towards the council elections happening this year. Within that strategy is the strategy of how we use the next general election and how we build towards the next Senedd election. So if you want to see success in Wales, all of these small points are going to be really important stepping stones to those Senedd wins. So if you're on the borders or wherever you are, please do come and support our target campaigns. All of this is always about resource, and that's people on doorsteps and money for leaflets, as you all know. So if you want to see that breakthrough in Wales, I'd also urge you to support these Welsh campaigns, because we don't get them as frequently as you do. And so we need to have big wins now to be taking us all the way to the next Parliament elections.
I will just mention that, you know, Amelia is uniquely placed out of all of those in the current leadership election to build on our current work in Wales and to lead us to the Senedd. So I guess there's something about like representation in the leadership team or in the leadership group. And, you know, having a Welsh person means that as she has just done, she's just advocated and set the tone where a priority can be, you know, joining Amelia on the doorstep in Wales, which feels to me like quite a strong way for us to deliver electoral success in Wales.
So I've got a few more serious questions to finish on before, as promised, when we were chatting before we started, the silly and less serious questions will come in. The first of those is, what do you think the party's currently getting wrong strategically?
So am I going to take this, or is Amelia? We'll keep swapping, so I'll take this. I mean, I think strategically, it's about this laser sharp focus that I spoke about. And it's kind of what I hope to be able to bring in terms of leadership is, you know, I've spent, the last 15 years with a kind of broad view over the environmental movement, and then bringing that broad view into a laser sharp focus around certain issues or campaigns. And in some ways, I think about Heathrow expansion and my role in delivering that campaign, both as part of Plain Stupid, and then as part of Greenpeace, and then as part of the kind of broader movement for change in the Stop Heathrow Coalition. And, you know, Heathrow Airport, we chose that to be an iconic site of struggle for the climate emergency. Like, that was a very deliberative and strategic choice. And we did that for a number of reasons. I mean, part of it was because it was its proximity to London. So that meant like more media and more journalists and more people coming to kind of understand and then become, you know, amplifiers of what climate emergency and the struggle against it looks like. Part of it was because of the population and the demographics of West London and how politically useful it could be to build an iconic site of struggle around the climate emergency right in the heart of what can be a Conservative and Labour, you know, which is kind of like it's a core constituency, West London, for both Labour and for the Conservatives. And so I guess, like, in terms of what we're doing as a party, like sometimes the message is lost. And I think right now we are at a moment when we need a laser sharp focus on why we are the party who have the policies from the Green New Deal to UBI that can counter or at least build a society that can withstand the shocks of the climate and ecological emergency. And, you know, we are that party and we are ready to do this work, but not enough people know about it. And so, you know, as with public awareness around the climate and ecological emergency is at an all-time high. It's in the top 3 of political concerns. So people are ready to have us come along and say, look, be part of this vision with us. We are the party that is going to help us cope with this. So yeah, I think it's like, for me right now, we need to be like really brilliant with our messaging on why we're the party that everybody who is feeling anxious about the future, which is everyone, needs to be a part of.
Which ties into part of our campaign strategy as well, because we want the Green Party to be the voice of the climate and ecological emergency in the press and media. And as a scientist, I think it is really important that we are having scientists talk about this. But then when people want to take action, it means that we're missing out on those next steps of what needs to happen. And frankly, what needs to happen isn't about individual action, it's about policy change. And that's why we need to have the Green parties talking about the policy changes that need to be put in place to address these big issues. And in terms of also things that we want to improve as well, is just the we see so many hardworking people. We've both been on the executive. We see incredibly hardworking people doing incredible things internally, and we can see that there are some systems and processes that could be improved and supported, which would make things a little bit more streamlined, whether that's our disciplinary process, just as an example. And so we want to be making sure that we are kind of easing some of the stress internally so that we can, as a party, continue on having that big, bold message externally, and to be rallying behind, you know, I talk to people of any kind of different sides of all kinds of arguments, not that we differ on many things as a party, but on the big things we do differ on. I see people on every side who all they want to do is achieve these big goals of tackling inequality while staying below 1.5 degrees of warming and addressing the ecological emergency. And that's what we want to be doing, is bringing everyone behind what we can achieve as a collective, while trying to on those big aims and ambitions.
And I would just, sorry,
sorry, Tamsin, I am going to cut you off there just because we are running short of time.
Yes.
And you did tell me I could interrupt you, and I'm taking that liberty now.
Yes.
So, because the reason I want to is because there's two questions that I wanted to get through, and before we move on to the flippant stuff, and I wanted to put them to put the first one to you, Tamsin, and the second one then I'll put to Emilia. Obviously, you can jump in and answer them separately. But the first one I wanted to ask is, so Tamsin, you at the start of this conversation, you were saying that the Green Party is the only party that is putting forward a bold vision to tackle the climate and ecological emergency. But in the 2019 general election, you encouraged people to vote Labour in Uxbridge, and you door knocked for Labour in Hendon. In both those constituencies, there was a Green Party candidate. How do you square those two things, saying the Green Party is the only party with that vision, and yet you campaigned against Green Party candidates in that election? So how committed to the party are you?
You know what, I think it is a good question. And I can answer it only personally, and that is that in 2019, I felt excluded quite violently from the Green Party. I didn't feel like it was a safe space for me. Around that time, I thought very seriously about cancelling my membership, and I didn't know, I don't think I ever would have thought of becoming a member of a different party, but I didn't feel like the Green Party was a place that was my home, because I had been told by various people on my Facebook that I wasn't welcome, and that my identity, that somehow I'd made a mistake about it, or that it was because I hated myself. Somebody said that to me, that I guess, like, with this, which we haven't touched on, and I'm grateful that we've been given the space to talk about the big ideas that Amelia and I have, because those are the things that people are going to rally behind. And in some ways, a bold vision for where we need to go is the thing, like, more than anything, that's going to heal us, is by having a positive and inclusive vision to take us forward. But you know, the reality is that the Green Party hasn't been a safe space for trans people. And I don't mean safe space as in like a place where trans people can feel like nourished and cherished, although like that would be nice. I mean, it's been actively dangerous for us in our identities, in our marginalized identities, to occupy space in the Green Party. And like that continues. And, you know, we need a leadership that is committed to solving this, because right now with our candidacy, we're seeing people flood into the party, rejoin again when they've left because they couldn't be part of the Green Party anymore. Because they want to vote for something that is going to heal this, because we need a place where people can belong and where trans people can belong, but not just trans people, other marginalized and oppressed communities as well. So I guess I'm like, this is a long way round, but you know, the reason why I campaigned for Labour is because I didn't feel part of the Green Party, because I had been excluded, and because for my own safety I had to put up an enormous wall that in some ways I thought was unbreakable. And what Sian did with her act of courage of actually admitting and of platforming it, so that, you know, part of this whole thing around trans people and what I've heard from people within the party just from my standing is, it's like, thank you so much for like saying, you know, that people feel gaslit, and all of these words are quite complex, and like we need an education program because there is so much that I can't communicate here in like 2 minutes around like gaslighting and around the idea that actually, like, you know, when people use these kind of tropes around trans people very easily from a platform that is a national platform for the Green Party, like in the leadership hustings, when people talk about trans women as a danger, as a danger or a threat to cis women, and it's like, that's not true. Maybe it's true that the Daily Mail found one example of like somebody who was violent towards this, but like patriarchy, like violence against women, usually comes from cis men, and yet we're not standing on every platform saying cis men are violent towards women, cis men are violent towards women. You know, it's just a distortion. Like the tropes are a distortion. Of course they are. Like, anyway, so yeah, I guess in some ways, like it's lucky that I didn't cancel my membership, because Amelia and I are able to stand, and we wouldn't have been if I had cancelled my membership back in 2019. But to be honest, I am political. I didn't want the Tories to get in, so I used the time and energy that I had to go and campaign in a way that like I was being told would be useful. And I guess like if there'd been a Green Party option in those seats that would have won, like I probably would have gone and done it for them instead. It wasn't a particularly thoughtful position. Like maybe if I had thought that I would have like a career in the Green Party, which at that point was absolutely impossible and would have been absolutely impossible were it not for the courage of Sian, and also for the courage of Amelia to say, you know what, come and stand alongside me so that we can sort this out, and so that it can be one of our #1 priorities. And because you know, Amelia is a great ally, of course she is, and there are other great allies within the candidates for the election, but like she can't advocate as well as I can for what trans experience of being in the Green Party has been. And yeah, it hasn't been great.
Thank you for that, Tamsin. And that actually leads on to the question that I wanted to put to Amelia, which is, you were elected first as deputy leader in 2014. You've been deputy leader for the last 7 years, and over that period, the issues that Tamsin has just been talking about around transphobia in the Green Party, I think you'd struggle to find someone who wouldn't say that they'd got worse over that period. Now, you're standing on a platform very vocally in support of trans rights, of tackling the issues of transphobia both within the party and in wider society. But I wanted to ask you, Emilia, how can you make sure that people trust that you'll be able to deliver on this issue and tackle this issue, given that it's gotten worse whilst you've been part of the leadership team?
It's interesting because in 2015, one of my favourite events at Green Party Conference was a trans panel, which was one of the most well-attended events that we'd had at that conference, because people wanted to come and hear about the lived experience of trans people. And we know that the GRA consultation created divisions in our society, and from going from a point of hopefulness and understanding, we've gone from a point of divide and cruelty at some points, as Tamsin's described. And that's happening in society, and we've not been immune to that within the party. And I think at this point, it's a really important point for me to step from behind the shadows of the leaders. We're not an incredibly well-resourced party. I've been working to do what I can as a trans ally without being leader or co-leader. And that has unfortunately been about posting things on social media. I've talked about education strategies before, but not had the opportunity to work and deliver them. And I think that the experiences that I've had from a point where we were strong at showcasing trans stories and lived experiences to this point, I really hope that I can build on that experience to take us back there. You would have seen from our Liberation Manifesto that part of that isn't just about trans rights, it's about talking about, and I've been so basically this comes from a story of staying up until 3 a.m. drinking cups of tea with an older, a veteran activist in the party. And when talking about trans rights, she said, what I've realized is at the age of 83, I'm still learning. And I really want to kind of build in that always learning idea into what we do as a party, which I can do as co-leader, but as deputy wouldn't have had the resource and opportunity to do in such a way. I had kind of ideas and hopes for what I could have achieved, but simply didn't have the support to do that. And this is from stepping behind the shadows of the co-leaders, a real opportunity to work to tackle this head on.
Okay. So I promised we'd finish with less serious questions, and I'm sorry that we're transitioning from possibly the most serious questions that I've asked to the least serious, but we've got a couple of minutes left, so I'm going to ask you my quickfire, less serious questions. My first of them is, what is your favourite and least favourite Green Party policy? And I'm going to pick on Tamsin to go first.
Oh, is this not serious? That feels quite serious. Okay, favourite. Oh, look, it's the one that says we're going to platform trans experience. And maybe it's also the Green New Deal for the kind of total picture and vision. Least favourite is any that talks about population in relation to how we are going to tackle the climate emergency.
And Amelia?
So completely back Tamsin on the Green New Deal, because that's got UBI at the heart of it, and really is about the transformative change that we so vitally need. And then actually I'm going to do a cheeky least favourite in that at the moment the wealth tax isn't in our policies, and it had been and it's not at the moment, and I would love to see that back in. So the absence of a wealth tax is because I think it's really important, and certainly during the last 18 months we've seen why the importance of wealth tax, of windfall tax, to make sure that we are readdressing the inequalities in our society.
What's your favourite biscuit, Amelia?
You do this every election, and it's the same answer. It's a rich tea. I appreciate it's boring, but I love a cup of tea, and it's the best dunker.
And Tamsin?
It is a hobnob with like bits of chocolate in it. Basically, it's like the vegan chocolate hobnobs.
And
your favourite pizza topping, Tamsin?
My favourite pizza topping? No, you know what? Like, I just don't have a good answer for this. Go to Amelia. Come back to me.
Amelia first.
It's hard, isn't it? Because all the like vegetarian options, they're all like, they've got all like sassy names, and it's like either you've got a margarita, a loaded veg, or like the kind of like Franca Manca names, that Franca Manca names. Anyway, I really like spinach on top, like just like with other things, but I always think like spinach is a nice addition.
Oh, yes, actually, I've just remembered. So sometimes I just freak out because I used to really love a pizza, and then my partner is gluten-free. She has celiac, and obviously I don't eat, I mean, maybe not obviously, but anyway, I don't eat like delicious mozzarella these days. And so sometimes I'm like, oh, it's like the gluten-free pizza crust with like, but actually somewhere local to me does an amazing aubergine cream pizza topping. So how about that?
Excellent. Are you a cat person or a dog person, Tamsin?
I am a cat person, as much as I'm either species' person.
And Amelia?
This is why we're so good, Tamsin. We always fill the different voids. I'm a dog person, although I've never had a dog. I've only ever had cats.
Good. And Amelia, what book has most influenced your politics?
Oh, that's such a good question, because I actually think that it would probably come from more of a science background. I'm thinking of like my lecturer was this wonderful person called Brian Moss on ecology of freshwater, but I feel like a textbook from a university would be a little bit deep, but possibly Polly Higgins, and the idea that one global international policy to end ecocide could be a pause button on the destruction that we have. And I think it was a really important way of bringing in ecological emergency into a legal and policy framework.
And Tamsin?
I just wanted to share that Polly Higgins, Julia Butterfly, and I began the Age of Aquarius, which I think is like 2012, going to visit the oldest oak, which is in Windsor. And it was one of, you know, those experiences in your life where you kind of zoom out for a second and you're like, how on earth and how lucky am I to be alongside people such as these. And I just think in terms of the Green Party and where we're going, like those are the moments that we're going to kindle throughout our membership, is moments when people just zoom out for a second and are like, how lucky and how grateful do we feel, even in these times, to be working alongside people such as these towards a purpose such as this. Sorry, whenever anyone talks about Polly, I just want to just change the whole conversation and just talk about Polly. So I can do a reaching back to my bookshelf and say this book right here is well, I mean, there are many books, but if you're asking for one, then I would say Audre Lorde and Black feminist thought generally has so deeply enriched and informed my political imagination.
So viewers now have a reading list to go away with. But my final question for you is, who inspires you in the Green Party the most, Tamsin?
Oh, it's Amelia.
That's not allowed. You cannot choose your job share candidate. You have to choose someone else.
It's so tricky because I've just met so many amazing Green Party members over the past like 3 months, and all of them are, you know, they're just so inspiring and encouraging. And I just don't think that it's all right for somebody to choose one, and I certainly won't be unless it's Amelia.
Triangulation there from Tamsin. Amelia, who in the Green Party inspires you the most?
I feel like I'm going to offend everybody now. It's actually Anne Power. I think that she is the most inspirational person who is been at the forefront of different movements and understands things like the power of her age as well, and the kind of conversations that we've had that are really deep and thoughtful, and just every time I speak to her, it feels like such a powerful privilege. And I just think the way she's committed her life to being at the forefront of climate activism is just really inspiring.
Brilliant. So we've got some book recommendations, some inspirational people, some biscuit choices, some cat dog preferences, and we are going to finish there. Thank you so much, Amelia and Tamsin.
Thank you so much, Chris.
Thanks, Chris.
And everyone, subscribe.
You're already stealing my thunder on my final housekeeping. So I do have a few bits to tell you all before you leave. So the first of them is, as Tamsin just said, scroll down now and hit that subscribe button. It doesn't cost you a penny. If you've enjoyed this interview, you'll enjoy the rest of the interviews that are coming out in the future. So please do subscribe right now. You won't miss any of them. Also, I found this conversation absolutely fascinating. If you have too, I'm sure you have thoughts. I'm sure there are things that you agree with and indeed things that you disagree with. So hit below the comment section and let us know what you think. A few final bits. Firstly, for those of you who are new to Bright Green, you might not be aware, but we are not funded by billionaires or big money backers. We solely rely on the kind donations of wonderful people like you. If you are able to, please do head to bright-green.org/donate. I'll say that again because I stumbled. bright-green.org/donate and set up a regular donation. We ask people to set up around £5 a month, and it helps us keep going. It helps us put on more videos like this, coverage of the Green Party of England and Wales, the Scottish Greens, the Green Party in Northern Ireland, the Labour movement, social movements, and the wider left. Whilst you're on the website donating, you can also check out all the rest of our coverage of the leadership elections. Every Monday throughout the leadership election, we'll be releasing a news roundup of everything that's gone down, your digest of everything you need to know in the campaign, as well as having news pieces on each candidate's campaigns, comment pieces from supporters, analysis, and more, all at bright-green.org. And the final thing for me to remind you to do is, if you are a member of the Green Party of England and Wales, voting will open very, very soon. Make sure that you do vote. You will have an email in your inbox. Find that email and vote. In the meantime, we will have more interviews coming up soon. Carla Denya and Adrian Ramsey, an interview should have already gone online already, and very, very soon we will have an interview with Ashley Gunstock as well. So after that big long ramble at the end, that's it from me. Thank you all so much for watching, and I will see you very, very soon.